You probably remember one of the key rules of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Every ship is required to respond to a received signal.
Systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
And that was a human voice in that transmission, and it's our responsibility to investigate.
There are other recurring elements as well. For example, a regularly repeated phrase,
Perfect organism.
as well as the persistent desire to obtain a xenomorph at any cost, regardless of human lives, which is clearly stated in Secret Directive 937 from the very first Alien movie. But where did all these rules come from? How did it all start? How did the company even learn about the existence of the alien, and why did they include all this in their protocols? In this video, I will talk about a theory partially confirmed by official sources. It reveals how Directive 937 came about and helps to unite the scattered plot fragments, including the controversial moments of Alien Covenant, into a coherent and consistent story. Before figuring out what Order 937 is and where it came from, it's worth refreshing the chronology of the entire Alien franchise, because many still get confused about the sequence of events in the films. What happened when, and which events were first in the storyline, not the release dates. The first film that saw the light of day is, of course, the legendary Alien from 1979. And since it was the first, viewers often forget that many of the films that came after illustrate events before the main film. The event of the first Alien takes place in 2122, while Prometheus takes place much earlier in 2093. Alien Covenant unfolds in 2014, and even the series Alien Earth begins in 2020, that is 2 years before the events of the original film. All the other films in the franchise, such as Alien Romulus, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection, take place after the events of the original film. This is where we first hear about Directive 937, the notion of a perfect organism and the company's policy of responding to signals from space. That's why it makes sense to focus on the earliest films in the timeline, Prometheus and Covenant. In 2089, archaeologists Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway discover recurring symbols on ancient artifacts, markings they interpret as invitations left by humanity's creators.
It's the same configuration. I mean, it's got to predate the others by a millennia.
Elizabeth Shaw asks Peter Weyland to fund an expedition.
Hello, Mr. Weyland.
Motivated by his own goals, uncovering the mystery of humanity's origins and attaining immortality, he sends the ship Prometheus to the moon, L5223.
And I have finally found 2 people who have convinced me they're on the verge of answering them. Doctors Holloway and Shaw, if you would please stand.
The expedition ends in disaster. The engineers turn out not to be creator saviors. Weyland perishes, as does the entire crew.
I know. Have a good journey, Mr. Weyland.
Only 2 survive, Shaw and the android David.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right.
It is in this film that the viewer is first shown the black pathogen, a universal weapon and catalyst for evolution which David admires so much.
Organic.
Together with Elizabeth, he sets off to find the engineer's home. But when their journey leads to the planet Paradise, David unleashes the pathogen amphorae on the city, destroying all its inhabitants. The fate of Elizabeth Shaw is also tragic. She becomes a victim of his experiments and a source of materials for his research.
Shaw didn't die in the crash.
No.
11 years after the events of Prometheus, the ship Covenant with 2,000 colonists and embryos on board heads to the planet Origi 6. But after an accident, the crew intercepts a strange human signal.
There it is.
It is here that the viewer is first made aware that the company has a rule to respond to any signals in space.
And that was a human voice in that transmission, and it's our responsibility to investigate.
This priority is the reason why Captain Oram changes course.
And prepare the lander.
Roll in progress.
and Covenant ends up on the very planet, LV-223, where David is located.
Follow me!
There it is revealed that David has been conducting experiments for many years and has developed a prototype xenomorph. It is here that he utters a phrase that will become key to the franchise.
I've found perfection here. I've created it. Perfect organism.
Thus, two key motifs emerge in Covenant, motifs that are later echoed throughout the Alien universe. The directive to respond to signals, and the idea of the xenomorph as a perfect organism. The next time the phrase about the perfect organism is spoken by the android Ash.
Perfect organism.
By this point, Weyland-Yutani is clearly aware of the nature of the xenomorph, and a logical question arises. Where did the company get this data? The most plausible explanation is that David himself transmitted the results of his experiments to them. This assumption is confirmed in one of the official short films, where David directly addresses Weyland-Yutani.
Weyland-Yutani protocol sequence initiated.
I am David, son of the late Peter Weyland, your company's founder.
Advent was released as an official addition to Covenant. In it, we see David using a secure channel to send the results of his experiments to Earth, detailing his research.
You wouldn't believe the secrets I've unlocked. There was so much potential on this world. This primordial ooze ripe with advanced nanoparticles. It generates a unique reaction to every genome it encounters.
Moreover, it is in this data that he first speaks of perfection.
Perfect carriers. The perfect mothers. Everything deserves it, if not for the weak.
Thus, the logical chain becomes clear. The phrase, first uttered by David through his reports and transmissions, made its way into corporate archives and later into the protocols of onboard computers and androids like Ash. That's why an alien, Ash, now acting as the company's representative, repeats what David once said. All of this more or less fits into the canon. But this is where I want to take a step aside and propose my own version of events, a theory that ties together three seemingly unrelated elements. David's transmission describing his experiments, the emergence of the corporate directive to respond to all incoming signals, and the strange events encountered by the crew in Alien Covenant. If we recall the plot of Alien Covenant, there's a whole series of strange coincidences. First, the ship's accident caused by a neutrino burst. It would seem that neutrinos shouldn't pose a serious threat. We'll return to this point a little later, and I'll explain everything in detail. But the chain of events that begins immediately after the accident looks even stranger. The crew is urgently brought out of cryosleep.
Daniel, look at me, look at me, look at me.
I need you to get up, okay? We're coming out early.
And, by some strange twist of fate, it's the ship's captain who dies in his pod. Command passes to another officer.
To Jacob's his fine example as your captain.
And just at that moment, they receive a signal from the planet where David is located. Moreover, they pick up the signal exactly when one of the crew members goes into open space to repair equipment. This is what ultimately leads them to that very planet. You have to agree, the likelihood of such a sequence of events is practically zero. But once you hear what comes next, all of this starts to take on a completely different meaning. As we've already established, David transmitted information about his research to Weyland-Yutani. If we assume this happened while he was still on the planet, then we can assume the following. The corporation receives the first information about xenomorphs from David. The exact location of the planet is still unknown, but the interest is enormous.
I realized there was something extraordinary about the substance reaction to the human gene.
To not miss the slightest chance, Weyland-Yutani develops a new protocol. Every ship is required to respond to any incoming signals.
Systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
Responsibility to investigate.
The onboard computer, Mother, is essentially part of Weyland-Yutani's corporate network. Let's assume that the new protocols were instantly uploaded into her memory, including the new directive. By the way, why would David transmit this data to Weyland-Yutani if in one of the scenes he directly says that humans are a dying species that doesn't deserve a second chance? I think it's obvious that he needed new test subjects for further research. The film explicitly emphasizes that he is particularly interested in the human genome, and there are no more humans around him.
None of the planet's natural wildlife proved to be very fruitful.
Inviting Weyland-Yutani directly and giving them the coordinates would mean losing the chance to continue his research and becoming a servant to humans once again.
I was not made to serve.
So he starts sending a signal from his planet with a recording of a song, which essentially serves as bait for all passing ships.
Been happening every 46 seconds ever since we got here.
One of those ships turns out to be the colonial vessel Covenant. While the crew is in cryosleep, the onboard computer Mother remains active and receives the signal coming from David's planet. This signal is a recording of the song Take Me Home Country Road by John Denver, performed by a female voice. Later, it's revealed that the song was performed by Elizabeth Shaw using the engineer's equipment.
Take me home. That's fucking John Denver. That's Take Me Home Country Roads.
If the colonists were able to recognize the melody, it's quite possible that the AI Mother could have recognized it too. And who knows, maybe she even identified Elizabeth Shaw's voice. Now Mother's task is to carry out the directive from the leadership, accept the signal, and ensure the delivery of the organism. In fact, it's the very Directive 937. It's important to note that this time the android Walter, who is on board, is not privy to these plans and diligently performs his standard functions. Meanwhile, waking the crew and persuading them to land on an unknown planet is a highly dubious move. But she controls the ship and independently decides to provoke an accident that is not critical but activates the protocol that requires waking the crew.
Time to recharge the energy grid. Please report to the bridge. Walter, we have a problem.
Initiate emergency crew revival.
Of course, Mother has access to all the psychological profiles of the crew. She knows that the ship's captain is an indecisive person and is unlikely to change course and risk the mission for an unknown signal. In the extended version of the film, this is emphasized by a scene from his personal life.
I moved the chimney from the southwest corner to the northwest corner. I think it's better the other way.
His wife directly says,
You are the most indecisive man I have ever met.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
He's the most indecisive person she has ever known. Mother understands that such a captain is very likely to refuse to fly to an unknown planet, but she knows something else. In the event of his death, command will pass to Oram, a religious, superstitious person who, according to corporate policy, should not have had access to command at all.
They don't trust me for the same reason the company didn't trust me to lead this mission, because you can't be a person of faith and be counted on to make qualified, rational decisions.
For him, the signal from the planet may seem like a sign from above, and he is most likely to decide to land.
Now we're going to scrap all that to chase a rogue transmission.
Oh, ye of little faith.
That's why it's possible to assume that Mother could have deliberately arranged the captain's death. His death in the cryo chamber seems too convenient for the development of events.
It's too good to be true.
Moreover, Mother most likely had information about the crew's personal preferences, including musical tastes. That's why she redirected the previously received signal specifically to Tennessee's suit. He recognized his favorite song.
That's fucking John Denver. That's Take Me Home Country Roads.
Gotta be kidding.
Oh no, I never kid about John Denver.
Which made the signal even more convincing and personal. Note that the decision to change course and head to an unknown planet, putting all the colonists at risk, does not cause the slightest objection from the onboard intelligence.
And prepare the lander.
Roll in progress.
This further emphasizes that such a development of events was quite in line with her original plan. After landing, the connection between the ship and the group on the surface begins to periodically disappear, as if someone is deliberately jamming it. If anyone is capable of such a thing, it is primarily the onboard artificial intelligence. At first, Mother ignores the colonists' requests to evacuate them under the pretext of an ion storm.
Perisher, break it up. We can't hear you. Can you repeat?
Which would mean leaving the planet without a sample. Later, she does not respond to signals about the presence of a xenomorph on board. but the most telling detail is the arrival of David on the ship.
Welcome. How may I help you? Yes, David, as you wish.
He easily gains access to the ship's controls using his personal code.
Use security code David 73694-B.
This indicates that the system was initially set up for his admission. This means that everything happening is not a coincidence, but a pre-planned scenario. So what is the outcome? All these coincidences are too perfectly aligned. When you look at it all together, it gives the impression that Directive 937, the very one first mentioned in Alien, might already have been active aboard the Covenant. Mother acted not as a neutral onboard computer, but as a tool of Weyland-Yutani executing the order. Accept the signal, ensure contact, deliver the sample. Of course, it's important to emphasize this is just a theory. There is no direct evidence of this in the film. But you must admit, much of the plot begins to look more logical if we assume that the corporate directive was already in effect on the ship Covenant. What do you think? Does this seem like the truth? Write in the comments. Do you think Directive 937 was already on the Covenant, or was it all just a series of tragic coincidences? By the way, I mentioned the moment in Alien Covenant about neutrinos.
A neutrino burst was detected in Sector 106.
How could neutrinos possibly disable a ship? These particles interact so weakly with matter that they usually pass straight through Earth without doing any harm. But in fact, it's not about neutrinos. Neutrinos are more like a distress signal, a harbinger that something bigger has happened in space. The supernova explosion.
This could trigger a destructive event.
When a star dies, it first emits a giant stream of neutrinos, and literally right after, a real shockwave with streams of charged particles follows. It's this shockwave that hits the ship. Since we're talking about David and Walter, it's worth figuring out who is actually in front of us at the end of the movie. David or Walter?
Where's David?
Expired.
Judging by the context, it's definitely David. But there are a few oddities. The first is the missing hand, just like Walter's. Plus the characteristic scratches on the face.
Let me do that.
However, something else is more interesting. During David's fight with Daniels, she injures his chin.
That's the spirit.
And subsequently, this mark disappears without a trace. Moreover, Walter inflicts many blows on him, the traces of which we also do not see at the end. So who really ended up in the finale? There are several explanations. The first is that it was Walter who decided at the last moment to switch to David's side.
Serve in heaven or reign in hell, which isn't to be.
But this possibility can be ruled out. Walter would have known about the cabin by the lake, the one Daniels remembered.
When we get there, will you help me build my cabin? The cabin on the lake.
The second is that David defeated Walter, then cut off his own hand, damaged his face, and dressed in his clothes. But the question remains, where did the scar on the chin go? And third, somehow David managed to overwrite himself into Walter's body. I thought for a long time about which option was closer to the truth, and I'm pretty sure it's the second. The first is already excluded, the cabin by the lake. The third option with personality overwriting is intriguing, but breaks on an important detail. Walter is a newer and more advanced model with regeneration. In one of the scenes, you can clearly see it. The wound on his neck heals almost instantly. On the ship, however, the android can't even heal scratches, and Daniels helps him sew them up.
Thank you.
As for the scar on his chin, first of all, it was quite small, as you can see in this scene.
Or reign in hell, which isn't to.
And second, it could have been masked or quickly healed. Remember the scene where a crew member gets a chemical burn? They apply something like a patch at first, and later a regenerative biomass. Besides, we don't see David's chin right away. only when Daniels lies down in the cryo chamber. So, some time has passed, and the wound could have already healed. Thus, the conclusion is obvious. It was indeed David in the finale. If you're interested in the Alien universe, you actually have a chance to influence which videos come next. Your activity is the signal that shows which direction to go, whether to continue exploring the Alien story or dive into something completely different. So don't hesitate to show your support under the video in all the tried and true ways.